Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, a channel where we apply the principles of philosophy, spirituality, and mysticism to rapid lifestyle transformation. And we just released a video on the nitty-gritty of starting out the actual physical planning and implementation of radical lifestyle transformation, of going off-grid, of deciding and choosing, of finally taking the decision that you are going to be that person who is free from the prison grid, and you're going to be that person who crafts his or her own schedule according to his or her own values. And we do get caught up in a lot of the action, ladies and gentlemen. We get caught up on a lot of the conditionality of 3D reality and just reacting to it and trying to get into touch with the spiritual so that we can basically overcome that and get into another film role. But what it behooves us to do with more frequency than we ever thought necessary is to refuel ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, recharge ourselves and retreat. And that's why I go into these deep spiritual books and teachings. That's why this channel has a very strong Stoicism component, that we are going into the philosophy of Stoicism and ancient Greek eudaimonistic philosophies in general to give us guidance and ethics, a sieve, if you will, through which to filter our use of the law of attraction, our use of the law of assumption. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as we went into in my rant yesterday, and we will provide a link to that here, if you don't have an ethical system and values, then you can indeed use the law of assumption and the law of attraction to create everything that you want. But you may be really sorry that you did. Because you may be just creating suffering because you don't know what your values are. Therefore, you don't know what the ultimate goal is. That's why we go into books and deep books and philosophy here on this channel, hand in hand with the nitty-gritty on-the-ground actions. I think it's the most practical way to move forward. So we did discuss one of my top 3 books a few videos ago. I will also put a link to that either on the end of this video or below, and that was How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's a constant companion of mine. It gives me solace, it continues to give me new inspirations, and it helps me down that path. The next great book that we want to go through today is the Enchiridion by Epictetus. That is the handbook by the great Stoic teacher Epictetus. And I just wanted to briefly go into the biography of Epictetus. He was basically a Roman slave who was born into slavery. His master did him harm, but he was able to study philosophy with the great Stoics. And eventually he did earn his freedom, and his master freed him. And he became a great teacher. He also cared for orphans. He was just an all-around great man. He cared not for wealth. He lived in very humble circumstances, and he taught many great Stoics. And many Stoics, such as the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, looked up to him. He was even called, basically, the best representative that we have surviving of the ancient Stoic school or the old Stoic school. One of the great philosophers said, if you want to have touch with the old Stoa, read Epictetus. And he has bigger works called the Dialogues of Epictetus. And these works go into all manner of philosophical topics, and I would recommend that you read those if you can. There's a shorter handbook that was compiled by one of his students. And these are basically notes to classes that he's taken. They're very succinct sayings, and they're things that we can contemplate it. I always recommend it to the beginning students of Stoicism. And I just want to read from them and see how we can interpret and apply them. Number 1, just very simple. This is the whole essence of the Stoic philosophy, of the Stoic ethos. And that is, some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Now, all of these emotions, we could get very nuanced and say that a lot of these emotions, because of the momentum that's given to them, because of the fact that we have not watched and observed our emotions, they became a self-perpetuating force, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, the pain body. They're not in our direct control, but they are indeed in our indirect control, in that we can observe them and that we can lessen the hold that they have on our lives and eventually dissolve them by allowing them to run through us. And refer to our videos on emotions for that. We're not suppress emotions, rather we're to allow them to run through us and take their course, and then they can dissolve. But we do have control over them in that sense. Now, things that are not in our control are our body, property, reputation, command, and in one word, whatever are not our own actions. And in one word, what we call in this course the 3D, the three-dimensional reality, that is basically, like Vadim Zeland described it in Reality Transurfing, is a film roll. And that film roll, once you're on it, ladies and gentlemen, it has its own unfolding script that has to be played to the end as long as you're on that film roll, and that you have no control over modifying. So you have no control over that. And this is what Epictetus meant, I believe, by the 3D. And of course, we're infusing other spiritual concepts and works into the interpretation of these works, because it's the way I interpret them. So feel free to take issue with these interpretations, but it's the way I interpret them, it's the way I live them, and I think it's the way that we have to understand them in order to apply them as a holistic part of this course and this philosophy, the philosophy of making your life better and transforming your lifestyle. Being free from the slave grid, which is what our ultimate goal is. So he says, things in our control are by nature free, unrestrained, and unhindered, which, by the way, is the epitome of imagination and focus, ladies and gentlemen. Your focus is the only thing that's free and unhindered. I'm reading between the lines again here, but I believe this is what he means. It's what the other Stoics called your nous, or your intellect, or your reason. And I believe they were referring to not the flat two-dimensional reason that tries to take a snapshot of reality and then tries to make it linear, but rather it's this holistic right brain and left brain reason that comes together in your focus, which you have complete control over, and which you can create any reality in the moment that you wish to create it by going outside of time and space, by collapsing time and space, as Joe Dispenza and other physicists call it, through meditation, through imagination, and through mental rehearsals, what we teach you how to do in this course. It's not restrained. They're unhindered, but those that are not in our control, those that are on the 3D, those that are on the film roll in which we're currently pulled by momentum onto, are weak, slavish. Remember then that if you suppose things which are slavish by nature are also free, and that what belongs to others is your own, that which belongs to pendulums, that which belongs to another film roll, that you've given your powers to others, my interpretations again, then you will be hindered, you will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will find fault both with gods and men. But if you suppose that only to be your own, if you suppose that only to be your own, which is your own, and what belongs to others as it really is, then no one will ever compel you or restrain you. Further, you will find fault with no one or accuse no one. You will do nothing against your will. No one will hurt you. You will have no enemies. You will not be harmed. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you take control of the only thing that you have control of, your focus and your mentality and your spirit, and you leave all of the rest of that on the film roll to the others, then all of your goals are achieved immediately, because you can achieve them within yourself, because they already are within yourself. There's a great Islamic saying where the scholar said, leave the things of this world to the people of this world. And I could further restrict that by saying, leave the things to the people of this film roll to the people of this film roll, and just allow yourself to go down the stream of that film roll, because you are simultaneously, as a multidimensional being, already on another film roll. You don't have to fight and try to struggle with the film roll. You don't have to fight the pendulums. You simply have to withdraw your attention from that and place your attention on the film role where you want to be. You see how Stoicism so beautifully ties in with our modality of rapid lifestyle transformation and with applying the principles of law of assumption and law of attraction here. And it gives you a way out when you're in such a strong momentum in the negative situations you can't even think of a way out, because it becomes to you something that it doesn't matter if you can get out of it, because you can be happy anyway. Even if you're stuck on a negative film role, you can be happy. And ironically, by attaining that happiness, you can get out of that. That's what Stoicism allows you to do. So, aiming therefore at such great things, remember that you must not allow yourself to be carried, even with a slight tendency, toward the attainment of lesser things. Instead, you must entirely quit some things and for the present postpone the rest. But if you would both have these things, along with power and riches, then you will not gain even the latter, because you aim at the former too, but you will absolutely fail at the former, by which alone happiness and freedom are achieved. And we can go into this more, where Jesus in the biblical text is reported to have said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and then everything else will be added unto you." But he says, whoever seeks, in another passage he said, whoever seeks to maintain his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will attain it. That means that when you focus on the outer, you lose usually both the outer and the inner. But if you focus on the inner, you will naturally gain the outer, and that is because you're utilizing now the forces of the universe, the law of attraction, the law of assumption, and you're able to manifest spirit onto the physical. So, he goes into many things in this regard. And I'm not going to read all the passages, but I just want to read a few good ones. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. This is a key pillar. As Marcus Aurelius said, I do not have to have an opinion about this. You don't have to have an opinion about everything. Indeed, you can observe your reactions, you can observe your opinions, because anything that makes you happy or sad in the long term is due to your evaluation of that thing as good and bad. And I was listening to a lecture by Alan Watts just a few days ago. I listened to him when I was a very young man, and I like to go back and listen to his lectures every now and then. He's a great spiritual teacher. And he said that, I'm not going to go into details, but he said that even the smell of the most foul things, that being a bad smell, was instilled into us by our parents. We never thought that that was a bad smell. All of this is just imposed upon us by our society. And it's not their fault, because it was imposed upon them by their parents. But all of these conventions, all of these evaluations, even the feeling of pain is not in itself a bad thing. And we know this because there are masochists out there. There are people that derive pleasure from pain. So it even has to be taught to us and inculcated in us that pain is a negative thing. There could be some arguments about that, but basically all of our evaluations even can be changed, can be observed, and can be overcome. And it can make your life a lot more comfortable and ironically free up energy to attain anything that you want, because it's all about energy, ladies and gentlemen. So, death, for instance, is not terrible, Epictetus goes on, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When, therefore, we are hindered or disturbed or grieved, let us never attribute it to others, but to ourselves, that is, to our principles. An uninstructed person will lay the fault of his own bad condition upon others. Someone just starting out instruction will lay the fault on himself. This is very important. One who is perfectly instructed will place blame neither on others nor on himself. And that goes back to there's no guilt, ladies and gentlemen. There's no blame. There's nothing that you have to do. This life is not a test. It's not a competition. It's not something that we're supposed to get something. We chose to come here We chose to come here, and we're absolutely free. We're free of guilt. We're living by grace. So therefore, you will blame yourself because you'll know that you create your own reality. And when you learn that you create your own reality, then you say, why the heck would I have created these bad things? But when you get deeper into this modality, you realize that it's all a flow. And that blame is simply a negative emotion that drains your energy and will stop you from getting onto that higher film roll. Therefore, you never blame yourself. And I remember Joe Dispenza told his children, never feel guilty for anything that you do, good or bad. Never feel guilt, ladies and gentlemen, because the only rule is, as Seth said, the only rule is that you make the rules. But you have to live according to your own ethical system so as not to create suffering. So, this is very important. Consider when on a voyage, Epictetus says, your ship is anchored. If you go on shore to get water, you may along the way amuse yourself with picking up a shellfish or an onion. However, your thoughts and continual attention ought to be bent towards the ship, waiting for the captain to call on board. You must then immediately leave all these things, otherwise you will be thrown into the ship, bound neck and feet like a sheep. So it is with life. If instead of an onion or a shellfish, you're given a wife or a child, that's fine. But if the captain calls, you must run to the ship, leaving them and regarding none of them. But if you are old, never go far from the ship, lest when you are called, you should be unable to come in time. Now, this has traditionally been compared to death. But how could that be that you would not go far away from death if you were old? No, rather this means, Abraham Hicks calls, the state of alignment with yourself, the state of alignment with your inner being, the state of unconditionality and not being attached to conditions on the outer, because we know that they all change. We know that nothing is permanent, and we know that we indeed create those from the ether. That state is what Abraham Hicks calls the vortex. My interpretation of this passage is this. You can amuse yourself in the world and you can enjoy all of the earthly pleasures, but do not forget to get into alignment with yourself and the vortex. Therefore, when a condition changes, you're not too horribly upset, and you can recreate a good condition out of that. Because in the vortex, all of your creations are attracted to you, and you don't care whether you lose something on the physical, which will happen because the vibrations are ever changing. Do you somewhat follow me? Now, what could be understood by being old? Being old means that you're experienced and rooted in the spiritual path. Therefore, if you're older on this path, as I am, as many people watching this probably are, if you're more experienced on this path, it is a shame to allow yourself to be carried too far away by worldly attractions. Because first of all, as Marcus Aurelius said, an intelligent man who reaches the age of 40 has experienced everything there is to experience in life. So you're not really going to experience more. You can enjoy all of that, but don't have that as the end-all and be-all, especially if you're old upon the path. Remain close to the vortex, remain in the vortex, and always go back to the inner and have recourse to that, especially if you've been on this path for a long time. He says, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. And this, I believe, means the general tenor of the vibrational makeup of the world and the universe in the physical. Of course, in the spiritual, it is all one. At the divine level, it's all one. But living on this time-space reality, the law of attraction does govern everything. And there is no exclusion. You cannot say no to something. So do not expect that the law of attraction is going to give you a free pass. If you've been thinking thoughts of poverty and you expect abundance, this is stupid. No. Rather wish that the vibrational aspect of the universe carries on as it should carry on, whereby the universe gives you what you ask for, not what you say. Not what you want, but what you're in alignment with, and therefore you can put yourself in accord with that law and then you can attract anything that you want. But don't wish that, oh, I can think badly and still get good things. No, because this would be contrary to nature. So, remember that you must behave in life, he says, as at a dinner party. Is anything brought around to you? Put out your hand and take your share with moderation. Don't take it greedily. There's no reason to do this, because you know you can create anything that you need at the moment you wish for it, because you know how this stuff works. You've been doing this for a long time. Does it pass by you? Don't stop it, because you don't have to force anything, ladies and gentlemen. There is no force. Is it not yet come? Don't stretch your desire towards it, but wait till it reaches you. That means stay with the wish fulfilled, and don't say, where is it in this earthly sphere? But wait until you're fully ripe for it, and then it will come to you perfectly. If you try to bring things to you too early before they're ripe, ladies and gentlemen, well, it's like picking a fruit that's not ripe. It's not going to taste very good, and you're going to wish that you did it the right way. Oh, you can force manifestations, but when you do that, it's very short-lived, and it's not as sweet as if you would wait for it to ripen. I believe that's what this means here. Do this with regard to children, to a wife, to public posts, to riches, and you will eventually be a worthy partner of the feast of the gods. Which means that you'll be able to create anything that you want, and people will see you as a demigod. Because you're not attached to anything on this earth, you know how this system works. And if you don't even take the things which are set before you, but are able even to reject them, then you will not only be a partner at the feast of the gods, but also of their empire. For by doing this, Diogenes, Heraclitus, and others like them deservedly became and were called divine. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we put minimalism as a main pillar in this course, because you don't have to have everything that you think you want. Because most of these desires, you know that they're not going to make you happy. You're looking for the emotion and the feeling of that. So sometimes we can simply be happy with the emotion and feeling that we want to create, and we don't need to clutter our lives with so much of the exterior. And then we can become like Diogenes and the Cynics. And we're going to do a special video on the Cynics. They were basically people who took the rejection of the physical to the limit. A lot of them were homeless, they lived in the streets, and they begged and so on. But they proved that we're not telling you to do this, and the Stoics didn't recommend this. But they did hold them up as an example, because it proved that happiness was totally on the interior, and that you can be happy no matter what is on the exterior. So, as a symbol, ladies and gentlemen, not as something that we're recommending that you do. Just as Jesus said, the Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head. So just going ad hoc here, another very powerful passage. And I believe Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations also quoted this. The reason why these passages are so hard-hitting and why they're so pertinent to the philosophy of our channel, and why they sound like the philosophy that you were raised with, whether Islamic or Christianity, or Judaism perhaps, or even Buddhism or Hinduism. They call Stoicism the cousin of Buddhism as well, is because all of these are touching on the perennial philosophy. As a great man, I believe it was Renan, who said that the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius are an eternal gospel of perennial philosophy. And the perennial philosophy and the perennial theology is that golden string of wisdom that was given to all mankind and all of societies, and simply was taught and disseminated in different ways by different prophets and teachers and avatars and gurus and so on. So this is the perennial philosophy, and you have to find whatever texts and whatever modalities resonate with you. And the purpose of this philosophy is to live a better life, is to flower in your full growth and potential as a human being. It's what I want for you. It's what you want for you. And it's why you came. It's why we're doing everything that we're doing here on this channel. So, the perennial philosophy. He says, remember that you are an actor in a drama, of such a kind as the author pleases to make it. If short, of a short one. If long, of a long one. So the length of your life, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't matter, because the only thing that exists is now. As the great spiritual teacher Bashar said, the only time that exists is now. It is simply seen from different points of view. So therefore, why would it matter if your life be long or short? For all any of us have is now. And the other book, the final book of this trilogy that we're going to be going into, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It is a beautiful summation of what I believe is the perennial philosophy, and it teaches you how to live. Basically what the Stoics teach you, to live on the razor's edge of the now, to know who you are, and to connect with the inner, and to basically renounce the outer, and then you can create your own outer reality as a mirror. So, if it is his pleasure you should act a poor man, a cripple, a governor, or a private person, see that you act it naturally. Meaning that if you're on a film roll of that person, be that naturally and happily, and then ironically you can get off that film roll. For this is your business, to act well the character assigned to you. To choose it is another's. To choose it is another's. And what that means is, when you're on this film roll, you need to act it out, and just act it out in as natural and as easy a way as you can, because you know that there's no reason to swim against the current. And then that higher you, that multi-dimensional you, is already living on another film roll, and that energy is liberated so that you can feed it to the future you want. This is the way I interpret this, the way we interpret this here. And I'm waiting for the hate emails and hate comments here, but this is the way to interpret this philosophy to bettering your life. And Stoicism naturally does that. So, this is groundbreaking. Epictetus says, you may be unconquerable if you enter into no combat in which it is not in your own control to conquer. When therefore you see anyone eminent in honors or power, or in high esteem, or on any other account, take heed not to be hurried away with the appearance, and to pronounce him happy. And ladies and gentlemen, as we said on our rant yesterday, I know many very wealthy and famous people. Majority of them, ladies and gentlemen, are not happy. So do not think, oh, this prime minister or this person of great esteem, this billionaire, is happy. Because most likely he is not, ladies and gentlemen. For if the essence of good consists in things in our control, there will be no room for envy or emulation. But for your part, don't wish to be a general or a senator or a consul, but to be free. And I want to read that again, because... And I didn't consciously plan to read this, but this is giving me chills right now, because this is basically the essence of our channel. I'm teaching freedom. I'm not teaching you to pursue some kind of idol of wealth or something that's going to get you more imprisoned or enchained. I'm teaching you how to be free. He said, Epictetus said, the great sage said, for your part, don't wish to be a general or a senator or a consul. Oh, it's fine to wish those things. It's fine to, don't wish them, manifest them, become them. And that's another fine distinction. Don't wish it, embody it, then you are it. But take on the persona of that and do it from your own freedom, and do it in an ethical way and in a way that frees you, not enslaves you. Because if you're trying to go after the earthly mirage, then you'll bow to people, you'll do anything, you'll remain in chains and enslaved. But if you know that you create it, and you focus on freedom, ladies and gentlemen, you don't focus on some kind of false sense of efficiency, You focus on freedom. And when you're free, everything else flows from that. That's why the Stoics taught freedom. And the only way to be free is a contempt of things not in your control. A contempt means, like, I don't care what this boss says because he's not in control of me. I control my inner state. I don't care what this legislator says or what he thinks is coming down the pipeline because he can do no harm for me. The worst thing he can do is harm my physical persona. But I know that I'm much more than that. I know that all of the creation is within me, therefore nothing can harm me. Therefore, I'm going to focus on my inner work, my inner being, and how to create on the inner, and then everything will manifest on the outside. He said, "Let death and exile and all other things which appear terrible be daily before your eyes, but chiefly death. And you win, and you will never entertain any abject thoughts, nor too eagerly covet anything." So, that's why we teach in this course to sometimes, not obsessively, but sometimes go into the worst case scenario and then resolve yourself to accepting that, as it talks about in How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, and then realize, okay, I accept that. Now what? And then you don't care because you've already resolved yourself to accepting it, and then you can just move freely and you have no impediments. Of course, I know this is easier said than done, and I'm still working on this in myself. I know you are too, but we can constantly strive towards that. To have contempt for everything on the physical world. This is the last one that I want to read here, because we don't have time to go all into it. But this is very important. He says, let me see if I can find this here. It's a beautiful statement here from Epictetus. If you ever happen to turn your attention to externals so as to wish to please anyone, and we go into this, I have a video about pleasing others on this channel, which is the stupidest thing you can do. Be assured that you've ruined your scheme of life. You've ruined your rapid lifestyle transformation and your scheme of life, ladies and gentlemen, because you came here to choose your scheme. You didn't come here for the power control grid to control it for you. You didn't come for your family to determine your scheme of life for you. You didn't come for your spouse or your children to determine your scheme of life for you. You came to plan and to be sovereign over your scheme of life. Don't destroy that by trying to please others. Be contented then in everything, Epictetus goes on. Be contented in everything with being a philosopher. And what does that mean? That means returning within and knowing the true wisdom. The love of wisdom. Philo is love and Sophia is wisdom. Knowing who you are, knowing that you're a divine, multidimensional, and spiritual being, you are a philosopher. And, goes on Epictetus, if you wish to be thought so likewise by anything, appear so to yourself, and it will suffice you. If you wish for people to think that I am applying, let's say, this philosophy or the law of assumption or Stoicism, forget about that, because most people don't even care. But give it to yourself. Know that you are a philosopher in yourself, and let that be good enough. And then everything else will unfold on the outer. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen. So, I want to encourage you to read this book, the Handbook of Epictetus. I want you to meditate upon it. I want you to incorporate it in your practice. I also want you to read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Get into Stoicism. Because Stoicism teaches you how to live in any situation. It teaches you how to get back up after falling. It teaches you how to create and craft the life that you want and to become the person you want to become. So please subscribe to our channel and like it. I am doing coaching calls on all of these issues and effects. I will go and help you to achieve anything that you want to achieve in your life, drawing on my years of experience in business, in consulting, and now in lifestyle design, and my study of these materials of the law of assumption. It's going to be a powerful session. I will put my email in the description so you can email me to set up a coaching call. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you very soon with great love and appreciation. This is Javier. We'll see you soon.